All right, welcome back to another episode of Between Us and Y'all. I'm Yasmin.
I'm not peace.
And this is Between Us and Y'all. We created this podcast for conversations between mothers and sons to have a safe space to have healthy conversations. And we're excited to be here again. Today we have our first guest, and we're going to be introducing them in a second. But before we do, like we do every episode, we like to advertise for local businesses. So today I'm wearing a shirt by a company called We Buy Black. A friend of mine here in Atlanta by the name of Sharif and his wife, they have a company that they advertise for local businesses that are Black owned, and they have a conference every year as well. And so we want to advertise for them today, and that's our business for today. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of communication between mothers and sons and families in general, but since this podcast is for mothers and sons, the specific topic is talking about how mothers and sons deal with communication. That's our topic today. And specifically, we're going to be talking about resolving conflict and avoiding tension and how to adapt to change. That's specifically what our topic is today. Our guests today are our good friends who are in New York. This is Sudani and Qasim.
Hi, everyone.
We're happy to have them as our first guests on the show. This is the first time we've had guests, and it's only fitting to have one of my closest friends, Sudani. She was one of the first people to keep Nafis outside of my family to babysit him, and Qasim was one of his first friends. So this was one of our first examples of a mother and a son with a healthy relationship. This mom goes hard for her children. She has a daughter as well, and her son, who's also in college, like Nafis. All right. So we're going to jump right in. But before we do that, can you all say something and just introduce yourselves? Anything else you want to add to the introduction that I didn't add? College student.
All right.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
all right. So my name is Qasim. I'm a physics major at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm in my second, going on third year, and 21 years old.
Okay.
And I'm Sudani. I am a creative and a career mother.
And an awesome mom, too. Okay, cool. All right, and Ramadan Mubarak to both of you.
Yeah, Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem.
All right, so we're going to jump right into our questions. One of the things that we like to ask our guests, you all are our first guests, but we'll be asking every guest that comes on the show is about a family motto. Our family motto is to work hard, pray hard, love hard, and play hard. We try to incorporate that in everything we do and dedicate time to any area that has to do with that particular motto. Do you all have a family motto? And if so, what is it?
Well, my motto, I guess, that I've always chosen is family over everything.
Yeah.
And no, go ahead.
Do you want me to take this? All right. Oh, so.
Yeah. I mean, for me, in the back of my head, that's always my motto: family over everything.
How do you feel about that, Qasim?
I mean, I agree, definitely, because I don't know who I would be without really my family, without my family being there. So I definitely agree with like family over everything. You gotta take care. You gotta make sure that they're okay. You gotta make sure that they're doing fine. So.
Yeah.
Motto.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, if you take care of and instill in your family everything that's important, then those are the types of people that you're releasing out into the world, who can then impart those ideas to people who may not, be able to have the building blocks to build community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when you put family over everything, it sounds selfish and it sounds insular, but it can be of a greater benefit because those principles are then, can be shared with everyone in larger society.
Right.
That's powerful. And sometimes we have to be selfish with our family time, and the things that we commit to as far as family is concerned, because if we don't, who will?
Exactly.
All right. So thank you for answering that. I love that family motto. And we're going to jump into our first question. Either of you can answer the question as well as Nafis and I will give our feedback to the question too. Mm-hmm. Last time we had our episode, we discussed healthy and unhealthy communication strategies. sometimes when we're communicating, there will be conflict and tension. How do you avoid conflict and tension when you communicate with each other?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So usually my main understanding of like how conflict builds is mainly misunderstanding between two people. And like usually those two people, what they're trying to communicate, they're both arguing from a position where either they think that they're right or what they're saying is okay. And so usually when I am talking to my mom, I make sure that like my words sound appropriate, like the ordering of words sound appropriate, or I'm not assuming something or something else, because like assumptions oftentimes lead to other misunderstandings, or I'll say like I don't know if I'm using the right word or not, that kind of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. And my thing is I go with what is my intention. Intention is actually the absolute thing that you need to focus on. And sometimes you can be caught up in having a bad day, just having a bad conflict maybe with someone else, and you don't want any carryover. And so you think about, okay, what are the results? What results do you want from this communication? And then and that means that you have to check yourself, and you have to, everything that you say has to coincide with what you want your results to be. So if you want a positive result, then everything that you do and say needs to reflect that. If you put any glitches or any, shade or whatever else you want to put in there, then you don't get where you want to go. You don't get the results that you say you want. And so you always have to focus on that.
Okay, thank you both for answering. What about you, Nafis?
I think for me, definitely, like, elaborating on what they said is expressing like what you're going through throughout the day. So basically, like how you guys said, hey, like today is probably a bad day, or I was going through something. So don't, if I respond in a certain way, then don't take it as hard because I'm dealing with something else also. So definitely expressing that before you get into any type of conflict, because definitely that can be avoided, and that can, if that's not avoided, then it will create more problems that it doesn't need to be. So I think expressing that also, and just being completely honest, like, hey, I just want to completely understand what you're going through as a mother or as a son, and I want to give you my honest feedback, so I'm not just sitting here assuming or making these, to us, maybe far-fetched ideas or something like that, and we're just like, well, how did you come up with that?
Right.
So it's pretty interesting.
All right, I agree with everything y'all have said. You took the word right out of my mouth. I would also add, when you're talking, you're just not waiting for your chance to talk, but you're actually listening to what the person is saying, because you can kind of tell if somebody's not really paying attention to you, especially when you're talking to your mom or your son, if they're just waiting for their chance to talk, which means they're not really relating to you and really are not showing concern about how you feel. So outside of everything that you all have said, that's what I would add.
Yeah.
Good. In terms of the next question, since we are talking about ways to avoid conflict and tension, what do you think, what do those things look like in your relationships?
Like, how does avoiding conflict and tension look like for you? Like, physically, what might that look like in the day, in a conversation with you all, or even in unspoken, behavior? What does it actually look like? And we can, it's up to you if you're ready.
Yeah. For me, what it looks like is probably like being quiet, paying attention to how the other person is feeling, paying attention to how I feel myself, and making sure that how I say a thing does not necessarily, sting.
Yeah.
Because, I love my family, and I absolutely love my mother, but my mom, she could just, sting because, she grew up with brothers and sisters and stuff like that. And so, she was a middle kid. She had to, be able to have her comebacks. And so it's just me by myself. So I'm like, ooh. But I've learned that I was actually able to also kind of like do that. So I tried to pay attention and make sure that, I try to avoid that. Of course, ingest is fun and it's fine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But just trying to be mindful of and paying attention to myself.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I agree because like, when you're like mindful of like the other person's feelings, I generally like to listen, and I also pay attention, and I also do like. It's kind of impulsive, but like a gesturing sort of thing. Like I'll try something out of somebody's way because I know how it feels to have something in your way, and you kind of like just want to either have it just be completely out of your way by like knocking it over, or like ignoring it as a thing. So I generally try and get things out of people's way, so it like at least minimizes like just all my family's frustration in general, because you can understand like the compiling pressure of not only do I have to like clean the counter, but also have to clean up all these coffee grounds on the counter after this fool made this coffee. So I'm gonna go clean the coffee grounds off the counter, and it ruins the rags. And I generally like when people are going through. When like my mom is having like a hard time or something, I generally try and like either listen or just be mindful, like she said.
That's really helpful. I remember those coffee grounds, so we got a lot to deal with.
Right. Yeah. They never really go away, but he absolutely does his part to make sure that
Yeah.
That's really powerful. That's helpful to be able to know, those unspoken cues that, one person might need, especially your mom, to have that relationship to be able to say, I know my mom's going through something and I'm going to support her. Sometimes Nafisa and I have our own issues. Recently we had an issue, and one of the ways that avoiding the conflict and tension looked like for us the other day was I was preparing dinner and I just invited him to come help me snap some peas.
Mm-hmm. Break the tension.
Right. Yeah. Put all the tension in the peas, so we up in there busting them peas open.
Bust the peas, right.
All that kind of stuff. We were done because it was at least, 50 peas, if the bags come pretty quick. So we had to go through all of that, and we ended up having a pretty good conversation.
So that was the 50-piece strategy.
Exactly.
I appreciate that. We're going to try to implement that here. I love that. Yes, kind gestures. Making food that they like. You can choose, and it's like, what? I know he really likes this. We didn't necessarily agree on this, but he needs to know I still got him. You know what I'm saying? We gonna make smoked herring tonight or whatever.
Yeah. It does feel good to at least know that like people are thinking about you, or like think like or considering how you're feeling at the moment, even when it doesn't like necessitate it. Like even when you're not going through something. So it's like, how you doing? Like it feels good.
Yeah, so. And I can imagine that it feels even better for someone, maybe you were at fault or maybe you weren't, and there's a conflict happening, that they actually take the first step to do something nice for you. Because it kind of shows you how to solve conflict, and to get through things, sometimes all you got to do is just take the first step. So
yeah,
it's something you guys did that. All right, so have you ever experienced, did you want to add anything? All right, we won't always answer. All of us won't always answer, so it's all good. All right, so have you ever experienced some type of conflict and tension that ended up turning into something that led to positive growth for your relationship?
Let me see. Well, besides like the coffee grounds thing, because that is a very common thing. It's very frequent. And it's in both the size of the problem and the frequency. I at least try to like Like I make sure like coffee grounds are all over the place. Make sure you dump the thing in the trash, like the knock box for our coffee machine. But there have been actually primarily all the time when when me and my mom go through like some sort of conflict, it's something that I don't understand generally. And it's either like, oh, you can't be like picky with your food, stuff like that. Like I remember that was something that early on happened in my life. And I remember learning like, oh, you can't be like picky, choosy with the food that you ask for, especially the food that you ask for, or you can't like expect more out of somebody who's doing a nice gesture for you. If they're doing a nice gesture for you, you can't then be like, oh, but why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? So it's just kind of like as time progresses, I always am like looking back and like, how did I learn these certain values? How did I gain empathy? And it was usually from my mom teaching me like, oh, you can't be a jerk to other people. Well,
generally it's a bad idea, you know. It's just generally a bad idea. And so I would say for me, you know, at one point Kassan, you know, he was, you know, getting on my nerves for whatever reason, and something just wasn't going right. This is when he was a little bit older. And you know, however I was talking to him, it just really upset him. And even though I was right, you know, I was correct. The thing is, though, that I probably could have, you know, been just a little bit softer and made a little bit more space for him. And that did make me say, you know, the person who I'm talking to is really not a person who's difficult to speak to. Kassan is very easy for me to talk to, and so some people I may have to go, you know, a little bit harder when it comes to getting my point across. With him, it doesn't really require a whole lot. And so to me, I feel like giving him space and giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think that, you know, we could communicate a whole heck of a lot better now, because sometimes, you know, he'll be like, you know, yes, Mom, and I don't understand what you're talking about, but it's fine. Like, it's fine. One day I'm going to understand, but it's fine. And another thing that I do is I try to make it a point to let him know that, you know, you're going to always hear my mouth. You're never going to get away from this mouth. It's going to always be here, but it wants the best for you. It's never going to sound like a hater. You know, it's never going to sound like somebody who doesn't want good for you. And measure, you know, what I'm saying to you versus what a hater would say. You know, measure what I'm saying to you versus someone who is jealous of you would say. And sometimes as a young person, you know, critique hits you super hard. You know, it hits grown adults hard. So when you are a young person, already kind of critical of yourself, because, you know, that's kind of like the society that we grew up in. I say, you know, pay attention to what I'm saying, and just, you know, would a hater want you to do, you know, well? Would they say things to steer you away, or would they say things to steer you toward the problem? And sometimes when, you know, for me, I try to make sure I don't sound like a hater. But it also, he seems to have gotten that message. And so when we communicate, it feels like he's able to receive what I'm saying. in a way. So I feel like that is a kind of growth when it, that has sprouted from, like a major conflict. Yeah.
Okay. How about you? You don't have anything?
Well, I think for me to answer that question, I think personally how I see it is maybe around senior year of high school, going into freshman year, I started to open up more for myself and letting in with different stuff I tell my mom. I guess for me, it's just not being, like you just said, like she will always be here to support me and not really, bash me for the things I do. And she wants to be there and support me and give me all the advice that she can. And all I can do is just be honest, And when it comes to feelings and sharing how you do something, all you can do is be honest and, put it in a way that it doesn't seem like you're attacking somebody or you're, trying to one up somebody, because still at the end of the day, your parents still are individual and they still have their feelings and they, they have their own routine too. So you got to accommodate about how they do stuff also. So I think as of the recent years, I've been definitely trying to be more open about, how I'm feeling and being like, hey, this is, I'm still learning about this, but this is not something that I'm liking. But, if you give me some time, then I might, open up about it or something.
All right. And thank you. Before we move on to the next question, I wanted to share, there was a time I remember that I didn't really know Nafis was like what I consider to be like a Mary J. Blige artist. He paints, and everybody jokes about how Mary J. Blige kind of produces some of her best music when she's angry, so people kind of push her to be angry to produce this music that they want, and so I just remember one time I caught him really upset and like painting like crazy, like I never seen anything like that before, but it produced some of the best work I've ever seen it produce. So we talked about, what was going on to cause the anger first, but then also how to channel your emotions to actually be able to make it where it's not always anger that ends up being a thing that produces that type of work. It doesn't always have to be that way, because sometimes, like Mary J. Blige, I would assume, starts to search for sadness and stuff to be able to produce work if she's not able to do it in the same way while she's happy, So that was the first thought that came to my mind on that particular question. All right.
The next question is, sometimes verbal communication doesn't work to avoid conflict and tension. What are some nonverbal strategies you use to communicate through conflict and tension?
Nonverbal for me is, as we mentioned before, sometimes you make a meal that they like, or sometimes you will, just be quiet and give them space, or do, something on their behalf, Sometimes in order to resolve conflict, like you had mentioned, snap some peas.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with like non-gestural, nonverbal gestures and polite gestures and nice things, considering them a lot of the time, and sometimes even asking like if they are doing okay. Like sometimes I'll ask my mom if she's not feeling all right, like if she's okay or something. Or sometimes if my mom is doing something, I'll ask if she needs my help. And these things just kind of come inherently, not inherently, but like they come naturally, because my mom has always asked me like, oh, do you need help with something if I'm lifting something, or like lifting something heavy, or if I'm struggling with something, she'll ask me. So it's just kind of like a reciprocal relationship of like asking if we're doing all right, if we're doing okay, stuff like that, and giving space if necessary, because sometimes space is good. It allows you to like kind of like grow and figure out how you can solve the problem by yourself. So
okay. How about you? Nonverbal cues that you feel like are helpful to work through conflict and tension.
I think one that I really like is maybe just taking a drive and maybe just driving around Atlanta with, just the music on or something, and just really just, you still being, quiet and being alone, but you're still together in a sense, and you're those emotions, and you're just, when you understand that person is here whenever you want to speak, or hey, let's talk about the situation that happened, or how do you feel, or anything, or like snapping the peas. I definitely think that is a way to let out some anger. But I think those are some ways for me that I see.
All right. So adapting to change as it relates to healthy communication is very important. I'm sure there are ways you can communicate now that you weren't able to do before. What are some strategies you can remember using to allow your communication to adapt to change?
Let's see.
Well, the most change I think that we have experienced is I'll just say that as a parent, of course, you're viewing a child, your child change and grow, and you have to, again, bringing up the benefit of the doubt and kind of handing, some of the thinking over to them and stepping back and just allowing for them to move and actually have some confidence in your own, child rearing ability, and say, you know what, I think I did an okay job, and I think that you can do this, Yeah, and so I've had to kind of like be quiet when I normally would counsel, I kind of step back a little bit, because what I don't want to have happen is that my voice is the only voice that he hears in the back of his head, or his father's voice is the only voice, and he doesn't have a voice of his own. That's extremely important to me, that he's able to think things through on his own. If he wants advice, if he'll, I'll be able to tell if he wants my advice or not, or I'll step in if I feel like something can save him time, or trouble, or money.
That's important.
Yeah. But Qasim, go ahead.
I mean, so while growing up, I never really like spoke that much about this, but like while growing up, I saw and heard about a lot of like deaths by gun from black men getting shot, and it just kind of like looking back, I was looking back at it and I was like, what was going on during that period? And like my whole like thought process was one of like, I just don't know if I'm that good, or if I belong here, if I'm good enough, stuff like that. And it was just like a self-esteem issue. And it was something that while growing up, I had to like ask my mom for advice. Like, what did she think about not just the shootings, but like, what did she think about what I'm wearing, or what would she think about how I did something. It was just kind of like cultivating like confidence and self-esteem from like somebody that loves you, because it was just a time where you were like, the world doesn't like you, and I was like, it was just hard for me to like adjust growing up, thinking both the world doesn't love you, but at least your mom does. It was just a whole, well, at least my mom likes me. So yeah, like I didn't mean to take it to such a.
No, I'm glad that you actually brought that up, because currently, right now in Georgia, there's a case that's going on about this brother by the name of Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered, by gun by white supremacists in Brunswick, Georgia. And I can't imagine what his mother is thinking with Mother's Day coming next week. This will be her first Mother's Day without her son. So relating to that, I can speak to how my conversation and strategies had to change over the years, as far as how I speak to Nafis about even being outside, just doing something very normal, like going for a run, like that brother was doing, sometimes you have to know that there's going to be people out there who don't love you like I love you, or like your father loves you or your family loves you, and they're aiming to harm you. So this is how you prepare. This is what you do. And sometimes all of those strategies might not work, because I'm sure his mom might have given him strategies that it just didn't work for that day, and now he's deceased, but I can say that one of the ways my conversation strategies changed over the years is I have to be very specific to say, pay attention to your surroundings. Always make sure that you know who's in your car, know who you're dealing with, know who you're in a relationship with, know who you're surrounding yourself with, because you really don't know at the end of the day how those people are going to impact you. So thank you for sharing that. It's not somber, it's our reality, and
it is
conversations mothers have to have with their sons and fathers have to have with their daughters and sons. It's something, unfortunately, as Black families, we have to discuss more often than other families do.
The one thing that, like, not just my mom, but both my parents emphasized was staying alive so you can live to change it. Because otherwise, if you come with the attitude that you can change the world with your own, like, individual being and force, you're not going to get far. And that's why we always have the idea of family first. It's that family is not just one person standing above you with their arms folded and telling you what to do. It's you growing with them, and they're fostering a community with one another, and you're trying to build that community to then at least extend to other communities and hopefully change the world for the better. So
good. I love this conversation. Do you want to add anything to that before we move to the next question?
I think for me, having to adapt to changes, the stereotype in I feel like society that is like that Black men cannot be vulnerable. And I feel like growing up, it was like hard to like, oh, I gotta be this person who, was not sharing my emotions. I gotta be, tough and strong, and I gotta show my mom that. So I'm not just sitting here just, being vulnerable. And for me, as I've gotten older, I was starting to accept that it's okay to be, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel these emotions because I am human. I'm not a robot, and I'm not being programmed to just be big tough guy, and for me to become stronger and show her that I am growing and that I am being able to hear what she's saying, I have to show her that I, can be vulnerable in the times of, of tough times or rough times, or even the good times. So.
Yeah. And I just really want to add and just remind people, anybody who's listening, like, with our faith tradition, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not a like toxic dude. He was a very sensitive person.
Yeah.
He was a very kind person. He of all of the, attributes that you would, assign as far as to a good man, he got them all. Being, insensitive is absolutely not a description. It's not one of the descriptions. So, just to remind, it's okay if you do, show emotion or, Black boy joy or whatever it is that you do, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's only society that makes up weird rules, and they turn around and break them anyway. So
exactly. All right, thank you for adding that. And also, for our listeners, we have a friend of mine, Moses the Comic. Moses the Comic has a movement going on right now that he supports called Black Men Heal. And the purpose of the movement is to make sure that Black men are not overlooked when it comes to their sensitive side, or, if they need hugs or whatever. It's a whole movement, and that's the hashtag for it, Black Men Heal. So for our listeners, please look out for Moses the Comic and check out that particular movement so that you can support it. You ready for our next question?
The next question is, do you feel the strategies you come up with to adapt to change in your communication style has been effective with your families and friends?
That has affected my families and friends?
Has been effective
with your family and friends.
Yeah. So, sorry. Can you elaborate a little bit? Just a little bit.
So the strategies that you've come up with to adapt to change and how you communicate, some of the examples you guys just gave, do you feel like those strategies have been effective when you were talking to your friends or your family, somebody outside of your mom?
Oh, go ahead, Mom.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. That's on you.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of the things that like my mom has told me, like don't be out in the middle of the night and not let anybody know where you are. Make sure you answer the phone. Just answer the phone.
Man.
All day. Make sure you clean up after yourself. Pretend like what you just used, you weren't there after. Like when you came there, it's better than when you left.
Mm-hmm.
Just stuff like that. It's definitely allowed me to get like a close group of friends that like even now, like in the middle of this pandemic nonsense, they're like, are you okay? Do you need anything? Did you do this? Did you do that? They help like keep me in check. Because a lot of times the way I made sure that my friends operate is that we keep each other in check. So I'd like be like, hey, you need something? Or hey, I'm over here. You need something? It's just that sort of like pattern of checking in that's managed to like make my friends also do that to their friends. And we've seen there have been quite a few like close calls, I might say, because of what my mom has implemented. So yeah, like because of what my mom has taught me, there have been quite a few like that was close. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know any of this. That's great. That's what I'm talking about. Let's build community. That's all. Again, a healthy family can then, you can turn around and know how to be family with people who are not your family.
Mm-hmm.
It's really vitally important because at the end of the day, we are a community, and the healthier we are, the better. Yeah.
You want to answer that question?
I think definitely like the same thing that Cosmo said is definitely checking in on your friends and also showing them that if you need somebody that you need to, talk to or you need to express something, I'm always here. And you don't feel like, don't make it a burden because whenever, you need to call anytime, any place that I'll always be here for you. I definitely try to implement that with my friends. Like, hey man, like, I'm more than a friend. Like I'm your brother. Like I want to be there for you. So don't
not allow me to be there for you.
Yeah. So.
That's what's up. Y'all are some strong young men because these are not average answers. The young men are awesome. So
yeah,
no, they're not.
Our listeners, we're really grateful for our sons. And it's a reflection of the job we've done as parents, but also what they're doing for themselves. To speak for themselves and to be articulate in their words and to be honest about what they're saying. So we are going to go into our last question. And this question I like it because it relates to you all's motto about family first. And so this question is, do you feel the strategies you've developed to resolve conflict, avoid tension, and adapt to change as it relates to your communication is something that should be reserved only for your relationship? Or is it something that you can share in the same exact way with strangers?
Honestly, I think that the way that me and my mom communicate is something that that can be implemented across a lot of families. Mm-hmm. But I think the saddest reality that we might need to like confront is that, not to brag about what we are, but like both me and my mom understand how conflicts arise and we understand how we mitigate those conflicts. And we understand each other in ways that are like, I don't know, the way we've just I've been here for 21 years. You just kind of figure out, oh, you like the color green and crafts and plants. Okay. So I'll make sure that we take care of the plants in the house and we make crafts for the plants and stuff like that.
Do you feel like that's something other moms can take that exact example and use it, or do you think it's just something that people should
I
create?
think other moms can. It's just that the sad reality
They probably
is more like, because we understand how conflicts arise, not a lot of people do.
Mm.
A lot of people attribute like evil and like some other like universal force to the fact that a person is just doing something that they think is right. I think a lot of people have come with good intentions, but of course the road to hell is always paved with bad intentions. So I think our culture is kind of twisted in a way that's like at one end creating making sure that everybody who does not believe or think the way you do is like evil, and that's kind of like seeped into the way people parent and the way other people view their parents. They view parents as evil and attribute like there are abusive parents, but I've seen things that are like attributing abuse to things like timeout. Like, what? Please. like it just gets kind of weird because thought processes are very different, and we just don't have that understanding that conflict comes from misunderstanding. So yeah.
I think that we actually had at my daughter's school, we had a program, and the program was for parents, and they included everybody in the family. The way that this program worked was that we would meet, I think one or two every other day, or maybe every other Tuesday, or every Tuesday or something like that, or Thursday. And they would serve everyone dinner, and you would sit down, and they would take the children, and they would have their own space. Children who actually went to the school that were, K through like second grade, they would be together learning, doing their own thing. And that was called Friend School. And Friend School was when they would learn about how to resolve conflicts as children, and also like, how to eat right, and, go foods and woe foods. But the really important thing was sitting at that table with all these different parents. I'm in New York, so we all have, the same but different backgrounds, different, islands and cultures and mixes, but we were able to sit down and kind of level with each other, like as a round table, and speak about parenting and how to respond to your child when they exhibit this behavior, and eliminate the idea that whatever that behavior is, and eliminate the idea that your child is the only child doing this, and that all the other children have it right, and you don't see the other children do it, but your child. It really eliminated a lot of that. It brought a lot of honesty. It was really probably one of the healthiest things that I've taken part of outside of, being, in the house. Really, it was like one of the best things that I've done. And part of that was all of us being able to impart culture to each other, speak about how we deal with, your child and their changes.
Yeah.
And we actually loved it so much that our kids were like in fourth grade. It was really only supposed to stop at like first grade. Our kids were like in fourth grade. We were still coming. We were still coming when our children were in fifth grade. And now they're asking, can you still come? Of course they can't do it now, but, will you still come even though she's in middle school? Like,
wow.
Because it was so it is possible, but we had studies, this is backed by like research. It's and we had someone who spoke about, how most people handle certain things when it comes up to their children and their changes in behavior and perceptions.
Mhm.
And also, let's not perform for other people. You know, in public, you know, sometimes a child may be acting a certain way or being a certain way, no matter what their age is. And we feel like because there are onlookers that we have to show out because the child is showing out. And so you feel pressure to admonish your child harshly or something like that in the middle of the bookstore because everyone's looking at you. And one of the things that I did was say, well, not only are you not going to control my behavior in public, child, but no, the onlookers aren't either. So no, I'm not going to whip you, but I'm going to walk away from you. I'm going to leave you right there. And that,
Yeah.
and imparting these strategies. So I feel like imparting different strategies in that class, we learn certain strategies in that program. And it was called Parent Core. And it was just to empower parents in the New York City public school system. And it really worked, and it helped me build community. And I'm actually really close to one of the parents who I met in Parent Core, and she has been running my child's PTA since that time. And that was, I think, when she was like in first grade. You know, now she's in middle school. Her child was right behind Nadia. So I feel like yes, there is space for people to learn strategies that can help resolve conflict and things like that. But we do have to that was a safe space. And we have to create a safe space, a non-judgmental space, a mediated space in order to be able to, for some people, to be able to share. But once you are able to, it actually, you'll get more people, you know, drawn to it. Because it is
Healthy.
It's healthy. Thank you.
Thank you for answering. Do you want to add anything before we close? All right, we want to thank you both for being here. This has been an amazing conversation about communication, specifically about how to avoid tension and conflict in your relationship, something that happens oftentimes with anyone, but something that definitely happens between mothers and sons. We appreciate you all for teaching us ways to adapt to change. And we hope our listeners have benefited from the things that you've heard from our first guests on our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. This has been another episode of Between Us and Y'all. We hope that what we've shared has been beneficial. As always, we live by the motto of let's work hard, pray hard, love hard, and play hard. So we hope that you are able to do all of those things.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for this.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Have a good day. Peace.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.